Well, it's martini time. I have, I have to stand around for 5 or 10 minutes waiting for 5 o'clock. I ought to just go ahead and punch the button and get going. So we've, oh wait, I have to bring. So we've been, yesterday we were talking about the unicorn in the garden. And, these talks, I have one in the morning, Buddha's in your landfill, which I also call your Zen, moment of Zen, and then Martini Time at 5. And a lot of the ideas that come up are kind of like, for me, it's kind of like Mr. Coffee. The ideas perk slowly, drip. So all day long, these ideas have been dripping. And so by the time the talk comes around, I've got a cup of coffee for you. But it's been dripping all day. So these just reflections, musing, cow chewing its cud is kind of like that. And so these the ideas kind of like, well, it keeps me young because I'm awake and aware, and insight is my passion. And my love, because it's what life is all about, is having insight. So my concern is, that my intention is to do this. And so it is an all-day affair in the sense that I do the talk in the morning, and then I do some reading and writing on Facebook, and I take a nap in the afternoon because I get up so early, and then it's time for then the rumination for this talk. So it's not just a one-time thing. But anyway, we were talking about the unicorn in the garden and the tapestries, the unicorn tapestries in the cloisters in New York, which is the museum there, and huge tapestries that fill the whole wall, telling the story of the unicorn, which was the primary myth of the Middle Ages. And it's also a Christian myth, but it's in a fairy tale form. And this is the famous picture here. Got the, it's upside down. Aha, yeah, the unicorn in the garden. Okay, he's caught and he's captured, and he's in the garden, and the tree of life blooms when the unicorn is back in the garden. The flowers, the trees, the garden, life is blooming when you put a unicorn in the garden. And I thought this afternoon, well, let me show you this picture here. A house here, it says it's up back, no place like home. And this is this house here at Blackstone in 1943, and this is my wife, Tilly, as a little girl. And here she is. A number of years ago, I photoshopped her in. But this is this old house, and this is her. So in a way, this to me, this house has been a garden, my garden. I didn't intend it that way. I was a wild unicorn. I wanted to keep moving. I wanted to keep searching for my spiritual realization, for my enlightenment. So I was always moving and chasing rainbows and all this. But all the while, this old house was here. In fact, the brief story of it is, well, my wife grew up here. She went to Longwood in 1960. I met her in 1959 when she was at Longwood. And I was in Norfolk and Submarines. And so I would come up here on weekends. And we would make out in the porch and the living room. And her sister would be on the stairway peeking around through the banisters and giggling with her girlfriend. Right out of Saturday Evening Post, And there was a coal stove in the living room. It was a, big old Victorian home, and all the rooms had individual heats. I always called it a house of many climates, because you would go in one room and it would be, my God, it's hot in here. You go in another room and you'd be freezing to death, No heat upstairs. Still isn't. So anyway, we got married and moved off on our journey, and came back here in 1980 after going to India. We sold everything and went to India to stay in an ashram, and came here in 1980 temporarily, and have stayed. Well, the 80s was my attempts to get out of the garden. I was closed in, I was contained, I had a leash around my neck. If I died, my tombstone would be, "Here lies Tilly's husband." So this was not my garden. But I failed in trying to get out. So anyway, I got a job with the Courier. This is a long story. Got a job with the Courier Record, and with that, I stuck my horn in the garden and said, "This is my spot. This is Sheldon's spot. There's no place else to go. No place that is better, that will improve me any more than this spot here." So I've stayed here, and so the house has bloomed. So I have bloomed. Our marriage has evolved and grown, and this is home. And so that's the sense of when the unicorn is. This is not the unicorn in the garden is not so much a gender thing, male and female, although you can look at it that way. Because I remember we talked about the Shiva lingam and the yoni, the Hindu symbol of union, of opposites, the male symbol and the female symbol, So the unicorn in the garden too, the phallic horn of the garden, unicorn, and the circular garden, that's the same thing. But these are really cosmic principles instead of gender principles. I mean, you can look at it from a gender, but it's also a cosmic. So we're all unicorns, and we're all gardens. So what we're the transcendental. When you move this metaphor up to a more spiritual level, it's all you. We're all looking for our spot within ourselves where we feel whole and complete and creative. So it's not necessarily a physical place. It is an internal place, you see. It's an internal arriving at a place of unity within yourself where no matter where you are, you feel like you're in your garden, in your spot. So your spot becomes portable and not located and dependent upon some town or some physical place or some state or some relationship or anything. The goal of life is to become free from dependence upon form, which means dependence upon something that's going to die. See, all form is impermanent. All form dies. All form is we're going to lose all form. Everything has form, and we're going to lose it all. Nothing is going to satisfy you permanently. Nothing is going to last. Every thought, every person, everything you've done, everything goes. In fact, in time, the whole universe goes. So there is no place to put your head that is permanent. So the whole spiritual practice, as we go through the different levels of it, is going through the levels of dependency upon external form for our garden and feeling of being at home. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your place and all that. I'm just saying that this is more like these are kind of like metaphors for an internal journey that we cannot perceive because our culture doesn't support it. Our culture does not support the internal quest, internal journey. Our culture supports the external journey, where you're going to achieve something in form and get some place and acquire something and build something, you see. It's all external. But the real quest, the final quest, is an internal quest. So you're kind of like turning the glove inside out and beginning to work within instead of without. And this is really a shift when this happens. There's a shift in our life. Usually comes at middle age when the external quest, the climbing the mountain, begins to reveal itself as being the myth of Sisyphus. Remember that? There's a Greek myth of pushing the rock up to the top of the hill only so it rolls back down, and he has to push it up again and rolls back down. Well, you come to a point in life where you realize that that's all you've been doing. And when you really see that through and through, a shift happens. And you begin to look within instead of without, you see. And everything changes then. Somebody's at the front door. Hold on just a minute. Yeah. Yeah, I'm on live Facebook right now. You want to go in and have a seat now?
Okay.
I'll get you right there. Well, it's all ready to go. Here, I'll
Okay.
get it.
Okay, thank
There
you.
you go. Came out good.
Okay, thank you ever so
Well,
much.
enjoy it.
All right, thank you again.
All right. Now, isn't that fun? I had some pictures for one of the coaches at the high school whose girls basketball team had just gotten up to the state, but they didn't get all the way through, and so he had made some pictures of their team for them, and he came to pick them up. So anyway, we were talking about the internalizing of the external quest, and this is a shift that happens at a time in life when you realize that that you've done all the external is not going to give you permanent satisfaction. So there's an internal shift. But anyway, getting back to the Minotaur, but the unicorn in the garden. And I was just thinking about, I was writing about this earlier, about the wedding. The wedding is about the unicorn in the garden. The wedding ritual, the whole catastrophe, the whole thing, is that in the unicorn story, the bride, or the female, the woman who is the virgin, which means her mind, she doesn't have a judgmental mind. Her mind is free of conceptual contamination. Let's put it that way. And so this gives off, the virgin has an aroma that the unicorn is attracted to, and so she attracts the unicorn and puts him in her garden. And so basically the wedding ceremony is that the bride, as the virgin, has attracted a unicorn, some poor fellow, and then when at the ceremony, if she had the veil, well, you see the veil is a symbol of Maya, or the veil of illusion. The goddess is hidden behind a veil. Nobody can see the goddess except the hero with a pure heart. And so she has chosen a hero with a pure heart who loves her, and so they come down, and when they meet for the first time, remember, oh God, brides will go crazy if the groom sees them before the ceremony. They feel like the whole life will be jinxed. I've seen them go mad. Almost get divorced if the groom sees the bride before she's wedding. It's really far out. But anyway, so she comes down the aisle. She has a gift to him, and then she pulls back the veil, you see, and he sees her for the first time. He sees the goddess for the first time. It's all very magical and beautiful. And, and now he is in her garden. She has caught her unicorn. And with the unicorn, then, their life will be creative and flourish, and the garden will bloom and be children and money and house and family. And this little garden then becomes a universe, a creative universe. And of course, the children grow up and have their gardens and unicorns, and that's the way the world works, But it's all a very beautiful thing for me, in this catching. And the unicorn, you see, is always a wild one. He's wild out there. And so, the different unicorns are attractive to different brides. The wild one is kind of like the Marlon Brando, well, she's attracted to the wild one. I'm going to tame this unicorn. Or you get one that's already tamed. You don't have to do any work. You get one who's already got a business, and he's following in the father's footsteps, and success drips from him, and gold is dripping off of him, So, I'll get that, you see. But the unicorn tradition, the whole idea behind the unicorn is he's a wild, transcendental principle that does not have any you can't catch him because he doesn't have any form. See, in the mythological way of looking, so the goddess is the goddess of form. The goddess is the goddess, the womb, and is the form of the world. Things, form, phenomena, is all the realm of the goddess. And so the unicorn is a transcendental principle, like a seed. See, so the form, the earth, won't produce unless it has a seed. So the seed has to come in from without, you see. Just like the sperm and the egg won't produce unless it gets a seed, you know. So the seed, you see, comes into the egg or the form, and creativity happens. So the unicorn is kind of like that transcendental seed. So in a religious context, it would be grace. Grace would be the seed of the transcendental seed of the unicorn. Grace comes into you. You're creative and you are full of life and energy, and the wind is behind your sails, you see. So the wind of life is now moving you, whereas before you were in the doldrums and just lackluster, I got no energy and whatever, you see. So it's all this idea of inviting this grace or this transcendental seed or this insight or this impulse that energizes me. We want to invite that in, you see. How do we do that, you see? Well, we can't do it by effort or good works. It can only be invited in when we surrender, when we become a virgin. So it's the surrender to life that invites the impulse of life into it. The impulse of life can't come in as long as you're doing it yourself. As long as I've got full of ideas and I got strategies and I what to do and I'm full of opinion and judgments and I know and I'm certain and I got it all. Well, there's no place, there's no empty cup. The impulse of life cannot come in, you see. So it's only when we come to the point where we realize that effort and striving and anger and strategy and planning is going to create the unicorn. When we realize that that won't work, we just spontaneously give up. The best example I have of that, and I'll close with this, is my mother lost her, she was 100, she's still driving, and she lost her car keys. The car was out there, so she knew they were in the house. And she looked for days, and I went over there and she said, you know, if I don't find these car keys, I'm just going to have a stroke. You know, I just can't take it anymore, because she's looking under every place 5 times, you know. Effort could not find the car keys. So the next time I went over there, and she was very happy, and she said, well, you know what happened? She said, I just said, I quit. I gave it up to, I said, God, I just gave it up to God. I said, I quit. And she really did give it up to God. And the next moment, she found herself walking into the bedroom and putting her hand in a sweater, and there were the keys. So the keys were kind of like, to me, the keys were the metaphor of the unicorn. And she got the keys back. She got the keys to the universe. She looked to be 102. So she got the keys to life when she surrendered. The effort to find the keys. And that act of surrender can't be a manipulation. You can't say, well, I'll surrender. If you give me the keys, I'll surrender. You can't bargain. You see, it has to be a realization that you are totally helpless, and you're okay with that. In other words, there is a surrender in which you give up, but you don't give up and say, I'm faulted for giving up. You see, you don't give up and say, oh, you know, it's not a negative. It's just a letting go. It's just the fruit letting go of the limb and falling to the ground. It's a spontaneous falling or surrender. And that spontaneous surrender that comes from seeing that you cannot control life invites the unicorn into the garden. And suddenly you know what to do. Suddenly you have the keys. Suddenly you're okay. Suddenly things start moving, you see. Suddenly flowers grow. So anyway, I thank you for joining me this evening, and I'll see you in the morning, and we'll find out what's next in our moment of Zen.